Well, I'm out here today at the Buick Park Avenue that I just got, and if you saw my previous video, you saw that I snapped off one of the lug studs. So I figured I'd show you how to replace one of these. I do it fairly often, but figured this would be a good opportunity just to show you how I do it. First thing I'm going to need to do is take the caliper and the bracket off, and then get the rotor out of the way, so I can actually knock this stud out. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll go from there. Alright, well, I've got the caliper off, and I've hung it up here. You don't really want to let them sag, because if you let them sag, you can actually damage this hose. So got that hung up and out of the way, and I've got the rotor off. Now this one was fairly well rusted on, so what I did when the rotor was on there is I grabbed my hammer and tap in between the studs, and at the same time I pull on the rotor here just to kind of get a feel for when it's starting to break loose, and spin it around as I go and knock it off. So now we've got to get the stud out, and they're just pressed in, so I should be able to take a hammer. Now this is not a ball peen hammer. A real mechanic would use a ball peen, but I'm a jack of all trades, so I use whatever's handy, and we'll see if I can pop that thing out. I'm sorry if it's really loud, but kind of hard to do with one hand at the wrong angle, but I'll get her. It's coming. There we go. Now I'll probably grab a little punch and pop that through. Usually they pop out a little easier, but I mushroomed that with hitting it, so I'll grab a little punch and finish knocking that through, and I'll grab another stud and we'll throw it in. Yeah, here's a few of the studs I found laying around in my bucket of bolts that I dumped out, and there's more studs in here. Yeah, there's one, there's another one. I got roughly about 1 million of them, but I found 3 different kinds, and the one I want is actually this one. This one matches to the ones that are on the car, and it's pretty much identical to this one, except it's got that little bit of extra part on there. And I could use the smaller one, I suppose. I don't think it'd make a difference, but I'm going to grab this one because it's looks the same. I'm just going to match them up. So I'm going to go ahead and take it over to the car, and we'll get set up to put it right on. Alright, I've got the lug stud ready to go, and it just presses into the back here like this. So I've shoved it in there, and now we've got to draw it in. Now there's quite a few ways you can do this. There's actually a lot of different types of lug nuts. I only have a couple different kinds here, but the ones I have a shoulder here. So it's really tough to screw them on backwards to get a flat spot to hit to draw in the stud. So what I'm going to do, I mean, you could do it if you just used a wrench, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take some of these aluminum washers. I'm going to put them on there. I'm going to take an old lug nut off of something, and I'm going to need 2 hands, I think, to get that started, but well, maybe not. But I'm going to screw that on, and I'm going to come back with an impact, and I'm going to just tighten it up. And you can do this by hand. Some people maybe recommend that, I don't know, but I use an impact. It's just quicker for me. And you don't want to screw it in this way without the washers. These ones won't go all the way to the bottom, but on top of that, you'll ruin the little taper here on the lug nut, and then it'll be no good. You can do it if you use an old lug nut, one that you're not going to reuse, but I prefer to just use a couple of aluminum washers to sort of soften the blow. These are actually drain plug washers out of Hondas, and they work pretty good for what I'm doing. So I'm going to go grab the air gun and fire up my compressor, and we'll thread this sucker in. Well, I've got this just threaded in by hand. As you can see, it's not sucked in all the way like the other ones are. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my my impact, and it's going to be a bit loud, but you'll be able to see how it draws in. Now I should be able to hear a change in the sound of the gun when I get it all the way in. Well, let's find out for sure. And of course I turned off my compressor, so the so the air pressure is not really up to snuff, but it will suck it in. Well, I'm going to have to turn on my compressor. I mean, it's starting to go, but without air it's going to take forever. So I'm going to turn on my compressor. I'm going to suck it all the way in and show you what it looks like when it's done. Alright, I got it all the way sucked in now, and as you can see, the aluminum washers are pretty well mangled, but that's what they're there for, so they don't ruin the lug nut and in turn ruin the stud that I just put in. So let's take it off and see how it looks. Well, the stud looks alright. There's a little bit of aluminum embedded at the very bottom, but that won't hurt anything. And well, it sort of worked. It really works better if you take a lug nut that you can screw on backwards and get a impact on. But yeah, it worked fairly well. I'm not going to use this this lug nut anyway, but it saved it for the most part, and it didn't damage the threads on the way back out, so I'm happy with that. Now, to make sure this doesn't happen again, so they don't lock on, I'm going to go get some anti-seize and put it on the threads of these. And also, I'm going to clean this up here where the rotor sits, and sits on the hub here, and I'm going to put some anti-seize around that as well, so that the rotor should just slide right off. But the bearing's not too bad. There's no play in it. It's got a little bit of noise in it, but after 223,000 miles, you know, you can't really expect much. But that's basically a quick way to change a lug stud.